Before Mark Zuckerberg became the world's youngest billionaire, before the lawsuits, before the Senate hearings, there was a room, a windowless conference room in Palo Alto, California, where three men in tailored suits sat across from a sleep-deprived college dropout in a wrinkled hoodie. The year was 2004. The month was June. And what happened in that room would quietly engineer the psychological infrastructure of an entire generation. This is not the story you've been told. What you're about to hear isn't about stolen code or betrayed friendships. It's about something far more deliberate, far more calculated. Because Facebook didn't rise on innovation alone. It rose on a secret investment model that weaponized human behavior before anyone even knew what engagement metrics meant. And the people who made it happen? They were never supposed to be named. If you're drawn to stories that expose the hidden machinery behind the world we live in, stories that challenge what you thought you knew, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, and leave a like to help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. Because what comes next will change how you see your screen forever. Palo Alto, California. Summer 2004. The air was thick with the smell of eucalyptus and venture capital. Sand Hill Road, the legendary artery of Silicon Valley funding, buzzed with the quiet hum of ambition. Every coffee shop was a negotiation. Every handshake was a contract waiting to happen. But Mark Zuckerberg wasn't on Sand Hill Road that day. He was in a rented office space above a Chinese restaurant on University Avenue. The walls were bare except for a whiteboard covered in PHP code and user growth charts. The Facebook.com, still with the article, had just hit 200 Y1 users. All college students, all hungry for connection. And all of them, unknowingly, were being watched. Not by Mark, by someone else. His name was never in the press releases. His signature never appeared on the term sheets that historians would later analyze. But his money was everywhere. Let's call him Mr. Dalton. Because in this story, some names are still too dangerous to say aloud. Mr. Dalton represented a network, not a venture capital firm, not a hedge fund. A network, old money, East Coast wealth that predated Silicon Valley by generations. The kind of fortunes built on oil, railroads, and wartime manufacturing. The kind of people who didn't need to be famous. They just needed to be first. And in June 2004, they saw something the rest of the world didn't. They saw a psychology experiment disguised as a social network. Mark sat across from Mr. Dalton in that dim room. Dustin Moskovitz and Sean Parker flanked him, notebooks open, energy drinks half-finished. The air conditioning rattled. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Mr. Dalton smiled. "You've built something extraordinary," he said. His voice was smooth, practiced. "But you don't know what you've built yet." Mark frowned. "It's a directory, a way for students to connect." "No?" Mr. Dalton leaned forward. "It's a mirror, and mirrors, Mr. Zuckerberg, are the most profitable products in human history." Sean Parker shifted uncomfortably. Dustin scribbled notes he would later destroy. Mr. Dalton continued, "We're not here to invest in your company. We're here to invest in what your company will become, but only if you're willing to let us guide the architecture." "Architecture?" Mark asked. "User behavior architecture." Mr. Dalton slid a folder across the table. Inside were psychological research papers, Stanford studies on operant conditioning, MIT analyses on dopamine feedback loops, classified marketing research from tobacco companies on compulsion triggers. "This," Mr. Dalton said, tapping the folder, "is how you turn users into addicts. Legally." What Mark didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Mr. Dalton's network had been preparing for this moment for years. They had funded research at major universities under the guise of academic grants. They had hired behavioral psychologists who understood the mechanics of habit formation. They had studied every addictive product in history, from cigarettes to slot machines, and distilled them into a single question. How do you make people return to a screen without them realizing they've lost control? Facebook would become the answer. But the cost of that answer would be paid by billions of people who never agreed to the experiment. And it started that summer, in that room, with a handshake that was never recorded. Palo Alto in 2004 wasn't the mythological tech paradise it would later become. It was a college town with overpriced rent, mediocre Thai food, and an undercurrent of desperate ambition. Stanford students walked University Avenue with textbooks and lattes, unaware that a few blocks away, their online behavior was being dissected like lab specimens. The summer fog rolled in every evening at 6 o'clock, turning the sky a bruised gray. The palm trees stood still in the windless heat. And inside that office above the Golden Walk restaurant, Mark Zuckerberg stared at a contract. The terms were unusual. Mr. Dalton's network, which had no official name, no LLC, no public record, offered $2 million. Not for equity, not for board seats, for strategic consultation and behavioral infrastructure development. Dustin read the clause 3 times. What does that even mean? Sean Parker, who had seen enough shady deals to recognize one, said, "It means they want access to the data, not just analytics, real-time behavior data." Mr. Dalton, sitting across from them in his charcoal suit, didn't deny it. "We want to understand how people interact, what makes them click, what makes them stay, what makes them share." He folded his hands. "And in exchange, we'll help you scale faster than any competitor can follow." Mark looked up. His eyes, behind those wireframe glasses, were calculating. "You want to study our users." "We want to optimize your users," Mr. Dalton corrected. "There's a difference." What Mr. Dalton didn't say, what Mark wouldn't discover until much later, was that the network he represented had been investing in behavioral research since the 1970s. They had funded studies on television addiction, on shopping compulsion, on why people couldn't stop pulling slot machine levers even when they knew they were losing. They understood something fundamental about human psychology. People don't want to be happy. They want to be stimulated. And Facebook, with its endless scroll, its notifications, its likes and comments, it was the most efficient stimulation delivery system ever invented. The contract was signed on July 12, 2004. No press release, no announcement, just a wire transfer to a shell company in Delaware and a new server room installed in the back of the office. The server room had a locked door. Only Mr. Dalton's team had the key. Inside, they didn't just store data, they tested it. Here's what they did. They ran A/B tests on user interfaces without telling anyone. They experimented with notification timing, discovering that notifications sent at 11 p.m. generated 34% more engagement than those sent at 3 p.m. They tested emotional contagion. They selectively showed users positive or negative content and measured how it affected their posting behavior. They mapped social graphs to identify influence nodes, users whose opinions shaped their networks. Then they began subtly amplifying those users' content. All of this happened before Facebook had a privacy policy. All of this happened before the word algorithm entered the public vocabulary. All of this happened in secret. By September, the Facebook had 500,000 users. By December, it had crossed 1 million, and every single one of those users was part of an experiment they didn't know they were in. Mark noticed something strange that fall. The engagement numbers were too good. Users were spending an average of 47 minutes per day on the site, far beyond what any college directory should generate. The growth curve wasn't just exponential. It was perfect. Too perfect. One night, after everyone had gone home, Mark tried to access the locked server room. The door was biometrically sealed. He called Mr. Dalton. "What are you doing in there?" Mr. Dalton's voice was calm. "Helping you build the future." "By doing what?" "By making sure people can't leave." That was the moment Mark Zuckerberg realized what he had agreed to. But by then it was too late to stop it. Because the network behind Mr. Dalton didn't just want a successful company. They wanted a behavioral empire. And they were willing to sacrifice an entire generation's autonomy to build it. Winter 2005. Cambridge, Massachusetts. Facebook had expanded beyond Stanford and the Ivy League. It was now in 800 colleges across America. 5 million users. Growing by 100,000 new accounts every week. Mark Zuckerberg sat in a Harvard dorm room that wasn't his anymore, staring at internal metrics he wasn't supposed to see. Because he had finally hacked into the locked server. And what he found shattered everything he thought he understood about his own company. The data wasn't just being collected. It was being sold. Not to advertisers, not yet. To political strategists, market research firms, psychological consulting groups. Mr. Dalton's network had built a parallel infrastructure, a shadow analytics platform that processed Facebook's user data in real time and packaged it into influence reports. Who was persuadable, who was emotional, who could be triggered into action with the right message at the right time. And those reports were being purchased by people Mark had never heard of. Campaign managers preparing for the 2006 midterms, corporate lobbyists tracking public sentiment on legislation, pharmaceutical companies measuring emotional states to target antidepressant ads. Mark's hands shook as he scrolled through the directory. One file was labeled, Operant Conditioning, Phase 2 Implementation. He opened it. Inside was a behavioral modification protocol, a step-by-step guide to increasing user dependency through variable reward scheduling, the same technique used in gambling addiction. The protocol had been active for 8 months. It had been tested on 2 million users, and it had worked. Average session time had increased by 63%. Daily active users had spiked by 81%. User retention was now higher than any social platform in history. But the cost was invisible. Depression rates among heavy users, up 34%. Sleep disruption, up 29%. Anxiety symptoms, up 41%. And no one was talking about it, because no one knew it was happening. Mark confronted Mr. Dalton the next morning. They met in a hotel suite in San Francisco. Neutral ground, no recording devices. You're experimenting on people, Mark said. His voice was low, controlled, but his jaw was tight. Mr. Dalton didn't flinch. We're optimizing a product. That's what every company does. Not like this. Exactly like this. Mr. Dalton stood, walked to the window. The San Francisco fog pressed against the glass. Do you think Coca-Cola doesn't manipulate taste receptors? Do you think McDonald's doesn't engineer compulsion into their food? Every successful product in history has hacked human biology. We're just doing it with behavior instead of chemistry. People don't know. People never know. Mr. Dalton turned. His face was calm, almost kind. And that's the point. The moment they know, it stops working. Awareness kills dependency. So we keep them unaware. We keep them happy. Or at least, we keep them coming back. Mark asked the question he already knew the answer to. Can I stop it? Mr. Dalton smiled. You signed a contract, Mark. We have operational control over the behavioral infrastructure until 2012. If you try to shut it down, we'll invoke the termination clause. We'll take the IP. We'll take the user data. We'll build it ourselves and leave you with nothing. Mark's throat tightened. So I'm trapped. No. Mr. Dalton's voice softened. You're successful. There's a difference. That night, Mark Zuckerberg walked along the Embarcadero, hands in his hoodie pockets, staring at the black water of the bay. He thought about deleting the whole thing, shutting down the servers, walking away. But he didn't. Because by then, 5 million people had built their social lives on Facebook. And if he destroyed it, he'd be destroying them too. So he made a choice. He would stay. He would grow the company. He would become the face of it. But he would never forget what it was really built on. A lie. A beautiful, addictive, inescapable lie. Facebook hits 100 million users. The world celebrates it as a triumph of innovation. Time magazine puts Mark Zuckerberg on the cover. The kid who connected the world. But in a nondescript office building in Arlington, Virginia, Mr. Dalton's network quietly dissolved. The contracts expired. The shadow servers were decommissioned. The behavioral protocols were transferred to Facebook's internal team, now disguised as growth engineering and user experience optimization. The network had done what it came to do. It had built the machine. Now the machine could run itself. Here's what most people don't understand. Facebook didn't invent addictive design. It inherited it. From tobacco companies who spent decades perfecting compulsion. From casinos who turned gambling into a science. From television networks who discovered that cliffhangers kept people watching. Mr. Dalton's network didn't create those techniques. They just applied them to the most powerful delivery system in human history. A screen in everyone's pocket. By 2010, Facebook had 500 million users. By 2012, a billion. And every single one of them was caught in a feedback loop designed to maximize engagement, not well-being. The like button, introduced in 2009, became the most efficient dopamine trigger ever invented. The newsfeed algorithm learned to show people content that made them angry, because anger drove more comments, more shares, more time on site. The notification system became a Pavlovian bell, training people to check their phones every 11 minutes. And no one questioned it. Because it felt like connection. It felt like community. It felt like choice. Mark Zuckerberg would go on to testify before Congress. He would apologize for data breaches. He would promise to do better. He would claim he never intended for Facebook to be used for manipulation. And technically he was telling the truth. Because he didn't intend it. Someone else did. Someone who was never named. Someone who was never called to testify. Someone who walked away with billions in profit and zero accountability. Here's the real secret. Facebook's rise wasn't just about connecting people. It was about conditioning them. Training an entire generation to seek validation through screens, to measure self-worth in likes and comments, to compulsively check for updates even when they knew it made them feel worse. And the people who engineered that system? They understood something most of us are only now beginning to realize. The most profitable product isn't one people want. It's one they can't stop using. Today, Facebook, now Meta, has 3 billion users. That's nearly 40% of humanity. And every single one of them is still inside the experiment. The protocols have evolved. The algorithms have become smarter. The addiction has become normalized, but the foundation remains the same. A behavioral empire built on a secret investment model that weaponized human psychology before anyone understood what was happening. So the next time you open that app, the next time you feel that pull to scroll just a little longer, the next time you find yourself checking your phone without knowing why, remember, it's not your fault. It's not a lack of willpower. It's not a personal failing. It's engineering. And it was designed that way. By people you'll never see. In rooms you'll never enter. For profit you'll never share. If this story unsettled you, if it made you see your screen differently, then subscribe to this channel and leave a like, because the truth is uncomfortable, and uncomfortable truths need to be heard. The millionaire secret behind Facebook's rise didn't just create a company. It quietly reshaped the behavioral patterns of an entire generation. And the consequences? We're only beginning to understand them now.